Hi, this is CJ. Welcome to Autumn Leaves. What do you do when the man of your dreams is also your cousin's new boyfriend? Well, from a chaotic family Thanksgiving to the promise of a first date, this actually might end up being Jimin's best holiday season yet. Remember, you can help keep these audiobooks free for everyone by joining the Patreon at patreon.com/cjmoon. And you can find the original video version of this as well as dozens more on my main channel at youtube.com/@cjmoonwrites. All links, of course, are also in the video description. If you're watching as well as listening, hit the CC button to turn on subtitles. YouTube can auto-translate and also auto-dub the audio from English into the language of your choice. So wrap up warm and get cozy. I hope you enjoy the story.
No matter how many years his family had lived in America, Jimin would never understand Thanksgiving. Of course, he understood the point of it, even if the whole thing was mostly based on made-up history. At its core, it was supposed to be a harvest festival like Chuseok. Both are a time for spending with family, and each has its own unique traditional foods. Chuseok has songpyeon and yagwa, while Thanksgiving has roast turkey and pumpkin pie. But while Chuseok traditions center around respect and remembrance of the family ancestors, the point of Thanksgiving seemed to be to eat as much as possible, then pass out in front of an American football game on television. Nonetheless, it was a family holiday, and as such, Jimin didn't have his brother's excuse of living on the other side of the globe to ditch out when his parents said they would be spending the 4-day holiday with his aunt's family deep in the small-town Midwest. Joy. 6 hours in a cramped back seat during the nighttime motorway journey was never going to leave him in the best mood. So when they finally arrived sometime after 2 a.m., he barely muttered a polite greeting to his aunt and uncle before heading off to the sofa bed in the basement rec room to crash. He woke, bleary-eyed and still grumpy, to a cacophony of noise above him as preparations for big dinner commenced. And when he emerged from the basement steps, wash bag in hand, it was into the chaotic kitchen, his mother and her sister chattering away in Korean as they chopped, sliced, and stuffed a host of both American and Korean dishes for the table. There wasn't a clear space on any horizontal surface with mounds of vegetables and baking supplies everywhere. About time he woke up, sleepyhead, his mother chided, waving a vegetable peeler at him. "Hurry up and have a shower. Your cousin and her new boyfriend will be here soon." "Oh, he's such a nice boy, Mijong. So polite. I can't wait for you to meet him," his aunt gushed. "He sounds lovely. I can only hope that one day our Jimin will find someone dash." Closing the bathroom door cut off the rest of the sentence, but Jimin didn't need to hear it anyhow. It was a constant theme whenever family got together. The elder generation was obsessed with the younger, settling down and having families. And even though his parents eventually accepted that he was gay, he was still not exempt from finding a suitable permanent life partner as soon as possible. At least when his older brother Jihyun got married and started a family, it took the pressure off for grandkids. By the time Jimin was dressed and had presented himself in the kitchen for sous chef duties, the smell of roasting meat was already starting to fill the air. His Iyama and Annie were still chattering away, gossiping about relatives in Korea he'd never met and their marriage prospects. "Here, you'll need this." His cousin Naeon appeared from behind him, and despite it being just past noon, pressed a glass of chilled white wine in his hand. She was 2 years younger than him, and an only child. As the two youngest in the family, they had always gotten on best, playing video or board games together when they were kids, while Jihyun thought himself too mature to join in on the fun. "Thanks," Jimin grinned. Naeon had let her hair grow out since he had last seen her. Through her university undergrad days, she had fully embraced an androgynous phase and had been out and proud of her bisexuality. He wondered in passing if this new boyfriend had anything to do with this softer side of her, or if it was the other way around. "God, I'm glad you're here," he said, carefully giving her a one-armed hug so as not to spill his wine. "Misery loves company," she laughed. "Come in the living room and meet my boyfriend," she said a little too loudly over her shoulder, emphasizing the word for the benefit of the olds in the room. He didn't miss the secret smiles that passed between his mother and her sister as they filled the sweet songpyeon that would sit alongside pumpkin and pecan pies for dessert later. Naeon rolled her eyes. They passed into the living room where Jimin's father and uncle were reading the newspaper, the kind Jimin hadn't realized were still printed, and completely ignoring whatever parade was showing on the TV. On the sofa, playing a game on his phone sat the current object of his cousin's affections. And when he looked up, oh crap, it took Jimin's breath away. Jungkook, this is my cousin Jimin. Nayeon might have said more than that, but if she did, Jimin didn't hear her. He was lost in the dark, starry eyes of the man in front of him. As dumbstruck as he was by the man's beauty, who knows what embarrassing thing Jimin might have said next had his mother not called him to help roll out cookies. Muttering something he hoped was, "Nice to meet you," he bolted for the kitchen. As he pressed red, plastic shapes of turkeys and pumpkins into the thin sheets of dough, Jimin tried to pull himself back together and not sneak glances through the doorway into the living room. He definitely wasn't going to look at how Nayeon was lying with her head in Jungkook's lap as they both scrolled through their phones, and how domestic it all felt. Ugh, as if he didn't feel single enough even before all the comment from his mom and aunt. It's not as if he didn't want a boyfriend. Of course he did, but finding one wasn't easy. He was busy with grad school, and working part-time on top of it. But then so was Nayeon. Maybe he'd have to ask her for tips, because why couldn't that be him? With his head on that strong thigh, that very muscular thigh, straining the seams of those skinny jeans. He wanted that. Okay, he pulled himself up short. Maybe it had been too long since he'd been on a date, because this was Nayeon's boyfriend, and he needed to snuff this out now. Lucky bitch. And anyhow, he was dating Nayeon, so even if he had been available, he probably wasn't batting for Jimin's team anyhow. So while one part of his brain was engaged in politely trying to forget everything his aunt was saying, as she patiently explained to him there was a dating app like Tinder, but for people like him called Grindr, and maybe he could use it to find a nice boy, the other was giving himself a stern talking to about coveting his cousin's hot man. No wonder he felt a headache coming on. By the time they sat down for dinner, the house was so warm and steamy from all the pans on the stove and the oven being on all day, Jimin felt like he needed another shower. Or at least that is what he told himself was the reason he felt so hot and flustered, and that it didn't have anything at all to do with being seated next to Jungkook. With 7 of them crowded around a table that was usually meant for 6, he could feel Jungkook's nearness acutely. And when their fingers accidentally brushed as they both reached for the gravy boat at the same time, Jimin swore he saw sparks. Despite Jimin knowing he probably appeared a flustered wreck, Jungkook was perfect. Polite and kind and funny and generous. He shyly told Jimin about his undergrad degree in fine art and photography, and how his parents had almost mandated that he follow it up with a master's in business to ensure he had some marketable skills. He explained how Nayeon, always the straight-A brainiac of the family, was tutoring him in a last desperate attempt to pass his accounting class, and how grateful he was to her for being so patient with him. Jungkook was soft-spoken, almost bashful as they chatted, paying far more attention to the conversation with Jimin than he did to Nayeon, who was seated on his other side. But then Nayeon was being held conversationally hostage by Jimin's father, who was asking about any new tax loopholes he might be able to use to lower the rates on his restaurant. Perhaps being separated during the meal had been too much for both of them, because when Jimin started to help clear the plates, the couple slipped off quietly together. Finally, when all the dishes had been scraped and the leftovers suitably wrapped and refrigerated, Jimin looked to make his own escape. Both sets of parents were engaged in the living room, the women still chattering as they read magazines and the men snoring. In the background, the TV continued to blare sports, noises, and sappy Christmas commercials. Nayeon and Jungkook were nowhere to be seen. Thankfully, no one seemed to notice when Jimin quietly eased open the back door and made a break for it. The house his auntie and uncle had lived in all his life was backed onto a bit of woodland. It had been a favorite place to play when he and Nayeon were young. Of course, by now, some of it had been carved off to create a new housing estate, but thankfully a fair bit of it remained. Without waiting to see if he was called back, Jimin hopped the back fence and disappeared down the path. Not far into the trees was the clearing where he and Nayeon would hang out. They mounded dirt and boards into makeshift ramps for their bikes, and rebuilt a small fort out of branches each time wind or bigger kids knocked it down. The crown jewel of their secret space was the tree swing. His uncle eventually gave in to Nayeon's begging and hung it, leaving them with threats to be sensible because he wouldn't be rushing them to hospital every time they broke an arm. Mercifully, his prophecy had yet to come to pass. But instead of the solitude Jimin thought he was craving, he found Jungkook perched on the swing, tips of his boots dragging in the dirt. He wasn't on his phone now. His attention just focused thoughtfully on the ground in front of him. The young man looked up when he heard Jimin approach, stars still in his eyes. Whole galaxies of them, and it again left Jimin a bit breathless. "Hey," Jungkook smiled shyly. Nayeon was nowhere to be seen. "Hey, didn't expect to find you here. I thought you were with Nay." He shrugged. "Needed some fresh air." "Yeah, same. My family can be a bit much, especially if you're single." Even though it was only late afternoon, the sun was getting lower in the sky. Winter darkness was so depressing. He pushed a branch out of the way and took a seat on a fallen log. Now that it was just the two of them, Jimin allowed himself to look at Jungkook more closely. While his attention was on pushing himself gently back and forth on the swing, Jimin took in all the details he had missed with the fleeting glances inside. The ear full of metal, the tats on his knuckles, and ink that peeked out from under the cuff of his long-sleeved shirt. The lip piercing. For all Nayeon's newfound softness, her type had definitely changed. The man on the swing nodded. "Yeah, I know." He fiddled his lip piercing, chewing on the metal hoop, and for a moment Jimin thought he might be interrupting. He had picked up over dinner that Jungkook was probably an introvert, and maybe the reason he was out here was to try and recharge his battery before having to go back into the chaos of the Nayeon's family again. "Oh crap, I can go. I mean, if you need the space." "No." The reply was quick and firm. "No, stay. It's okay." "Okay then." "Thanks," Jimin smiled. At the edge of the clearing, he watched a plump gray squirrel gathering a winter horde. The leaves had already fallen, and the squirrel darted over and under them looking for nuts to stash. This had kind of always been Nayeon's and mine place to come to hide, ever since we were kids. "I'm glad it's still here," he said, glancing at the thinning woods. Where before you wouldn't be able to see through the trees, now the windows and roofs of houses on the other side were clearly visible. Jungkook's eyes followed his, a small frown appearing on his face. "Yeah, the area isn't what it used to be. In many ways." Jimin could tell from the tone of his voice there was a story there. "Did you grow up here too then?" He shook his head. "No, but I've been here since my freshman year of college, so long enough to see the changes." Where did you grow up then?" "Just outside Chicago. My family is still there. I'm moving back after this term, actually. Thanks to Nay's help, I'll finally graduate." He laughed, a little self-deprecating sound that made it clear graduation had been a struggle for him. Business and books aren't for everyone, and that's a good thing, in my opinion. The world needs more artists. "You really think so?" Jungkook looked up at him with an expression on his face that about broke Jimin's heart. "My parents don't think so. If I hadn't gotten a scholarship, there is no way they would have allowed me to study photography. I'm sorry they feel that way. But yeah, I really do think so. The world would be a gray place without art." The comment made Jungkook smile, a soft, gentle look on his face that left his cheeks tinged with pink. He really was so breathtakingly beautiful. Too bad he was taken. "So," Jimin cleared his throat, "if you're going home, you'll at least get to spend the Christmas holidays with your family. But is that a good thing or not?" Jungkook shook his head. "Nah, my parents won't even be home. They didn't expect I'd actually graduate this term, so they booked a 3-week trip to Hawaii over Christmas." Ouch! Jimin visibly winced. His parents gave him a hard time about his love life, but at least they had confidence in him and supported him in every way they could. "What about Nayeon? Is she going to come visit you?" Jungkook fidgeted awkwardly. Again, he fiddled with the piercing while he avoided looking at Jimin. Well, I guess it's okay to tell you because it seems you have the same problem Nay has, but she and I aren't actually together." "Wait, you're not?" Okay, he had noticed that Jungkook wasn't exactly Nayeon's type, but they had seemed so cozy together. "Nah, this is my way of repaying her for helping pass my class." She said she couldn't face another holiday of being interrogated. Plus, well, she was worried about me being on my own for Thanksgiving because I was supposed to be going to my boyfriend's parents' house for Thanksgiving, but he dumped me last week. Well, that sent Jimin's head spinning. The shock on his face, or maybe the fact he couldn't find the words right away to respond, seemed to have been taken the wrong way, because Jungkook immediately started to pedal back. Sorry. Yeah, I'm gay, but I thought it would be okay to tell you because Neon said you're gay too, and... I'm sorry if I just made things awkward. No, not at all. Jimin finally managed to sputter. Quick, Jimin, think of something clever to say. Would you like me to push you? WH what? The swing. On the swing, he hurried to clarify. My uncle built it, and dash. Sure, Jungkook smiled shyly. He adjusted his position on the swing to pull his feet up off the ground. Not an easy task with his long legs, while Jimin stood up and brushed himself off from where he had been sitting on the log. Moving behind Jungkook, he reached out tentatively to touch Jungkook's back. Slowly, gently after a few nudges, the swing began to move back and forth. Jimin could feel Jungkook's back through his leather jacket, hard and muscular, as he swung higher. Above the pair, the thick tree branch creaked, but had stood solid for dozens of years, and would for dozens more. You know, he started nervously. I live in Chicago, too. Do you? He said, twisting his head to look over his shoulder at Jimin. The action caused the swing to twist, and for a moment it veered wildly in its trajectory. They both laughed as Jimin grabbed at the rope to try and correct its path. His hand covered Jungkook's, and when the swing eventually settled into a gentle sway, neither moved. Their temperature had dropped as the afternoon waned on, and when Jimin spoke, his breath came out in curls of frost. I was wondering, well, maybe if you like. Jungkook watched him, all big starry eyes and pink cheeks, so soft despite the hard metal of his piercings. A beautiful contrast that Jimin would love to get to understand. Let me start again, Jimin said, taking a deep breath. Breakups are shit, and it really sucks your parents won't be there for Christmas. The holidays are an awful time to be lonely, so maybe if you like we could spend some of the time together, he asked hopefully. Jungkook looked away but didn't move his hand. It was warm and much bigger than Jimin's. Long fingers still curled around the rope of the swing. You don't have to feel sorry for me. I'll be okay. No, he said again and more firmly, allowing his thumb to drift across Jungkook's knuckles. That's not at all why I said that. I'd really like to get to know you better. Well, at least now that I know you're not Nayeon's boyfriend, he teased. It made Jungkook laugh, sweet and soft like candy floss. Yeah, definitely not Nayeon's boyfriend. Between you and me, he whispered. I don't think her girlfriend would approve. What? Jimin let out a laugh, so surprised it made him double over, almost falling as his grip on the rope faltered. Luckily, Jungkook was there. He stood and caught Jimin by the elbows, the pair now standing face to face, and Jimin continued to grin. She's been holding out on me? Seems that way. She and Lindsay have been together for a couple of months now at least. Cheeky bitch. I understand not telling her parents, but I wish she would have told me at least. I guess it's my fault for not keeping in touch. I'm not great at responding to messages, he admitted. Me either, unless it's someone I really like. His hand slid down Jimin's arms, stopping when their fingers brushed. So, would you answer my messages? Jimin flirted. Definitely. The reply was a bit breathless, and left both men grinning stupidly at each other. There you two are. Nayeon stormed into the clearing, a scowl on her face as the pair sprang apart from each other. Yama has been looking all over for you. It's time for dessert. Sorry, both stammered. Each stepped back a bit, trying to put a bit of polite distance between them. Oh, don't even try and pretend. Nayeon rolled her eyes. I knew you two would be perfect for each other. Just remember he's still my boyfriend for the rest of the day. Now, come in the house. I'm not waiting any longer for pie. Without another glance, the fiery cousin spun on her heel and headed back through the woods, leaving both Jimin and Jungkook speechless. Did she just? Yeah, so that's why. They both laughed. Cheeky bitch, Jimin repeated, grinning affectionately in the direction Nayeon had left. So then, Jungkook said, quietly reaching out for Jimin's hands and tugging him closer again. Can I take you out on a date when we are back in Chicago? I'd love that, he grinned. But I should warn you, I'm a bit Christmas obsessed. Oh, Jungkook raised an eyebrow. Fairy lights and baking cookies, kind of obsessed. Jimin nodded. Ice skating and hot chocolate kind of obsessed. Jungkook continued. Jimin nodded again, even more enthusiastically. They were both grinning from ear to ear. Soft kisses under the mistletoe, kind of obsessed. I think I know of the perfect first date then, Jungkook whispered. Jimin's eyes closed softly as Jungkook leaned down to place a feather-soft kiss on his cheek. Come on already, you two. But even Nayeon's yelling couldn't separate them this time. They both ignored the direction the call came from and continued to gaze at each other in wonder. It truly was serendipity, finding something beautiful when you least expected it. See you in Chicago then, Nayeon's boyfriend? Jimin teased, poking him in the chest as they turned to head back to the house. I can't wait. I get the feeling it's going to be the best Christmas ever.
Thank you so much for listening. I know the world is a hard place right now, and I really hope this story brought a bit of comfort to your day. If you enjoyed the story, please remember to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when a new story is released. You can find the written version of this and all my stories on my Patreon for free at patreon.com/cjmoon. I love you, I purple you, sarangay.